Benchmark Business Sales Valuations proudly presents the Meaning Business Podcast, hosted by Coudrey and Peter Spinda. This is the podcast for anyone serious about buying, selling, and preparing your business for maximum growth.
So welcome to the latest issue of Meaning Business, the Benchmark Business Sales Podcast. I'm Coudrey, the principal of Benchmark Business Sales Valuations, and I've got Peter Spinda with me today.
Thanks, Chris.
Welcome, Peter.
Thank you.
Today, what are we going to talk about today, Pete?
We're going to have a chat about what's a job, what's a business, are they the same thing, are they different, if they're different, why? And we'll probably challenge you and your thinking, whether you're actually in a job, whether you're in a business, whether you're transitioning from one to the other.
Yeah. So, might sound boring, but it could affect the business, your value, your lifestyle, and your future decisions a lot if you think about it.
This is actually really fundamental from my point of view. If you consider yourself to be an entrepreneur, if you want to build a business with value and you want to have staff and things like that, then you actually need to start thinking like a business owner and move away from the whole job mentality. But most often we start a business and we start it because we need a job, we need to make money. So in fact, we start as a job. So how do we transition
into a business? So can we start here, Pete? What do you think is the difference between a job and...
So ask you the same thing?
Well, okay, well, you go first.
Okay, so from my perspective, a job is a situation where you might have a business, you might have that ADN, but in fact, the business cannot function without you. So you draw some benefit, financial benefit out of the business, but the reality is that unless you're working in the business, you're not making any money. And that's the key, the words working in the business. A job needs you to work in the business, hands-on, doing whatever you do, whether it be driving the van, packing the boxes, you're working in the business.
Yeah. Alternatively, a business is an enterprise that can function without the owner's daily input.
Right.
If the owner can be away, overseas, and the thing functions without them being hands-on and running it, then that truly is a business.
Absolutely. And the other part of that is, from a financial point of view, when you've got a real business, you don't just draw money, say, as a wage, but you also get dividends, you get other benefits as a result of having that business structure. And I'm assuming then that means that the value of the business and the value of the organization is different as well between job and business.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about that. So just on that difference between a job and a business, though, a lot of small businesses are really jobs.
Yes.
A lot of people say they're in small business, they own a business, they run a business, but in fact, it is a business to all intents and purposes. They have an ABN and operate as a business, but it really is a job because that business doesn't function without that owner being there, overseeing it or doing it. Or a one man in a van, it's a business, but it's a one man business, it's a job.
That's right.
And the trick is, many people are happy with that. And you can often sell that job, that one man business or job, quite easily. But you'll get a lot more for it, or you'll have a look at their lifestyle if you can transfer that job into a business, if you can transition it into a business, right?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that I've grown up, having parents been in business for generations actually as a family, one of the things that I saw is that they never were really true businesses because my parents couldn't get away from the business. And so when you can't go away from the business, when you can't take holidays because there's no one else there to replace you, you don't really have a true business. You've got a job, yes, as you said, but you're tied to it, you're married to it. And so one of the things that you want to do in business, and probably one of the reasons why you started your business or got into business, is to have that freedom and that flexibility in the lifestyle. And so many people, paradoxically, get the opposite. They end up working 70, 80 hours a week, stressing constantly, and not being able to take holidays.
Not enjoying it.
Able to enjoy the quality of life that one should.
Exactly. So not only does a business give you the benefit of the freedom, it also enables, it becomes a vehicle that investors can invest in. So you can sell a share of that business to somebody else because it runs without you, it runs without them. And it will have higher value than the job. 100 years ago, most businesses were jobs. I think it's evolving to the point where people are taking themselves out. So a doctor used to be, and still is in many cases, a GP, seeing patients all day, and that's a job. But some doctors have figured out how they can leverage their time and turn their GP, being a GP into a practice where it doesn't rely totally on them. That becomes a business.
Yep.
They can get investors. They can sell it for more. They don't have to be there every day.
Yep.
So this, having a job, it's great. You're free. You're not answering to anybody. You can do what you like. And we'll talk about the future of jobs and business in a minute. But a business, if you can migrate from a job and turn it into a business, there's some significant benefits.
There are. I think for any business owner out there, regardless of whether you're in a job or a business, first of all, you need to understand why you're doing it. What are your whys? What are the goals? What are the things that you want to achieve in life? And use that as the motivator.
Yeah.
Because while we want to transition, in many cases, from a job to a business, the reality is it can be quite difficult. And it takes a lot of perseverance and a lot of focus in order to get to that stage. Because in order to go from a job to business, you don't just put more money into it and start putting on people, but you need to think about things like your systems, your processes, having things set up in such a way that someone else can come in and replace you without actually stuffing up the whole show, and then you're left with nothing. So it is a process that you've got to work on, and it's something that you've got to work on for yourself as well, and be willing to let go of that ego, be willing to let go of the reins so that someone else can come in and actually help you within the business.
So I think it's good to think about value. So generally speaking, as a business valuer and a business broker, having sold hundreds of businesses or thousands and thousands of businesses over 25 years, one thing that you realize when you just walk in to talk to a business owner, the first question you ask is this a job or a business? A job type business is worth between 0 and 2 times profit. A business is worth between 2 and 5 times profit. But the profit as an owner-operator can be more money than if you are a hands-off owner, and but it still could be worth more. So this is something I just wanted to just illustrate that. I thought I'd talk about an example.
Yep.
So one of the guys here was talking to me yesterday, about here in Brisbane, about a business that's he's listing for sale. So the owner, the business makes about $150,000 a year, and owner takes on top of that about $300,000. So all up, the owner earns about $450,000 a year, and that's EBITDA, which is proprietor's earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. That's what they earn all up, and they work in the business to earn that $450,000. If they take themselves out and put a manager in, let's say they're going to pay that manager $150,000, they're going to make $300,000 a year. So as a job, it's worth 2 times the $450,000, $900,000. As a business, if he puts a manager in, he'll make $300,000 a year. It's worth about 3.3 times, maybe even a bit more than 3.3 times. But 3.3 times is $990,000. So it's worth a little bit more as a business than it is as a job, right?
Absolutely. So the gain isn't necessarily the financial gain. So we got to look at it from a different perspective as well. So you get that extra $90,000, 10% more, fantastic. But from my point of view, the big gain is really in the form of time and lifestyle, because in the first instance, you're doing everything, and you might be working 60, 70 hours a week in order to achieve that sort of income. As soon as you put a manager on, potentially that drops down to 10, 15, 20 hours or maybe even less, simply because someone else is doing your job. So if we look at it from that perspective, you also gain time. And with time, what you can do is actually leverage it by working on the business.
Correct.
So in that second example, we've got at the moment, one's worth 900, the other one 990. But if you gave that business owner time to work strategically on the business, they could potentially ramp up things quite significantly and build a team if that's what they wanted to do. And all of a sudden you get a revaluation in 2 years' time, and the business is worth multiples of the 990 that it was originally worth. So that's how we've got to look at it. We don't just look at everything from a right now perspective that I've got to pay someone money right now. We need to look to the future and say, okay, well, this is an investment today that builds value tomorrow. And that's how we need to think as business owners. If you're in a job, you look at it from a today perspective. How much money did I make today? Can I buy milk and bread?
Yeah.
Short-term thinking. As a business owner, we think strategically, think 2, 3, 4 years out, and we think, okay, how do I build value? How do I maximize return on investment? And importantly, challenge yourself to say, okay, well, how do I work least amount of effort, least amount of hours in the business, but get the most amount of impact out of it?
Yeah. So that what often happens is we get the people in that scenario where they're making the $450,000 a year, good money, working in it, and they'll earn less, $300,000 a year with a manager running it, but it's worth the same or more.
Yep.
But now, as you pointed out, they've got freedom, they've got less stress, and they've got time, and that time enables them to look at other investments or work on the business, not in the business, which is a massive factor we'll come back to. But the other thing, it does two other things, which is really big benefit. First of all, it creates light at the end of the tunnel. We got, when you convert your business from a job to a business and you put a manager in, and that's to be a good one, you have to have policies and systems and procedures in place to make that work. But if you've got that there and it's working and you can step away, you've got incentive, you've got a vision, you can see why you're doing it. And the other thing is that not only does it give you freedom and lifestyle, but you might think, I don't want to sell that business now. I'm going to keep it. Where else? What am I going to do with that money, that $990,000, that's going to give me $300,000 a year return, and I hardly have to work in it? Right. I'm not going to get that from shares or investment property or putting the money in the bank. Maybe I should hang on to it. And from our point of view as business brokers, that's great. Because when they do want to sell, we'll sell it.
Okay.
But you don't have to sell right now. If the ability to improve the value of the business and operate and your lifestyle comes about, that's great. That's a better.
What that be is you could get a couple of $100,000 a year out of your business and not have to be working so hard. And we've seen this, and I've personally seen this with clients of mine, where we've gone through the transition of going from a job to the business, and all of a sudden everything changes. Everything changes at home. The family environment is so much better because all of a sudden mum and dad are back home. They're able to drop the kids off at footy practice or whatever it might be. And it might sound trivial, but it's not, because it's those sort of things that make up our lives. So it is very important to make that decision between job and business and commit to that movement, not just for finances, but also for you and your family.
And the quality of life. Absolutely. So it gives you that new vision, it gives you new enthusiasm, it reinvigorates you, or it can do, when you've got somebody working in the business. And there's the other thing I said we come back to is this working on the business, not in the business. So I'm sure you've seen this, Peter, but quite often people are so thinking short term in the business, dealing with the daily issues, that they can't see the bigger opportunities. They can't see the strategic opportunities. They take themselves out of that business. Someone else is now running it. And suddenly you get this new vision for what I'm doing, what we can do better, how we can acquire another area or get rid of something. So the opportunity to change what you're doing and improve it becomes about because of the vision that you get by being outside the business and not in.
There's also another factor, which is the empowerment factor. So what happens is, as soon as you as a business owner and you've got a team, you lift a foot off of the working in the business, right? That means you're delegating more. And as soon as you delegate more, what means is that you're empowering your team to buy in more to the business. And when you empower someone, what ends up happening is that they become more effective, they're more loyal, you get better quality, reliability, all those sort of things.
Feel they're more effective and they're more empowered, right?
Absolutely.
Sometimes you release the restrictions that you were putting on because you're making all the decisions about the business.
Absolutely.
Suddenly they're making more decisions about marketing or operations or customer service.
And that's how innovation happens. Innovation, business improves. So there's a lot of benefits in doing that. There is another factor, which is this whole concept around ego. So first of all, letting go of ego is important because that allows us to delegate. But in fact, what ends up happening when we end up building a business that's successful and you're working strategically, your ego actually gets rubbed even more because you're successful. And you can look in the mirror and go, wow, I've done this. And it's a great feeling. It's a good position to be in. And as Bruce said, you don't have to sell the business if you don't want to, but what it gives you is choice. It gives you choice to move forward. It gives you choice to do what you want to do. And you might decide, instead of selling, I'm going to come back to Bruce and I'll say, Bruce, listen, I want to acquire another business.
Yep. It's easily done.
Many businesses are doing that nowadays. Acquisition is a very, very popular method.
Growth acquisition.
Yeah.
I just mentioned ego. Ego is an inhibitor to performance and results. If we get rid of our ego, put it aside, things are usually better off.
That's right.
So yeah, it's a real handbrake.
I mean, that in itself is a separate podcast talking about people and ego.
But if we could put our ego aside, we're often better off.
Yes.
And there's two more little things I thought we should talk about today. One is how you transition from job to business, and the other is the future. So let's just talk about how do you turn your job, which might not really be a job, it could be a business where you work in it, into a real business. What do you think the steps are that need to be done?
I don't think that there's one prescribed method for everybody. And the reason is because, and then you know this full well, Bruce, that there's really two types of individuals. We've got the entrepreneurs and we've got the conservatives.
Yep.
So if you're a conservative business owner, whether it's a job or a business, you're going to think differently. You're going to do things differently than someone who's more entrepreneurial. Entrepreneurial is more risk-taking. Conservatives is a bit more planned and thought out. Structured. So what you're going to do is different for each situation. But my advice is, first of all, start with the basics, which means you need to have a business plan in place. You need to have systems and processes in place. And what I mean by that is the ability for someone to pick up a piece of paper or a document to say, okay, well, this is how I do what you want me to do. So for example, if I'm your receptionist and you want me to answer phone calls, there's a process. There's a script that I might say. A system, that's right. And there's systems for everything. So what you want to start doing is build systems and processes within your business so that as you grow, you can start bringing on people much easier, and that allows you to become more and more hands-off. The other thing that you've got to do is very much from a proactive perspective, force yourself at least once a month in the early stages to stop working in the business and to start working on the business. So stop packaging and actually sit and research and plan and look at your numbers and forecast and do the basic fundamental things so that you start thinking like a true business owner as opposed to just working and packaging. That's how I'd start.
So I'll add to that, and we'll talk about making the decision in a minute. In fact, we'll start there. So I believe that what you need to do is have the systems and strategy in place, but first you need to decide. You need to decide, okay, I'm going to change what I do from a job into a business. And once I make that decision, then I need to do this. I can't do it without strategy and systems. So what's my strategy? How am I going to do this? And what's my systems? But it's a bold decision. It's a big decision. I know somebody who owned a business that started off as essential oils. And it was started from their garage at home. And it was a one-man band or husband and wife. And they were selling these things, and they were selling vaporizers that online. The business grew. And then when they made that decision to get out of that, stop being a job and turn into a business, they made that one decision. Then they had to implement strategy and they had to be systems. But the decision was so hard to make because they suddenly realized we're going to make less money by employing people to do what we do, but we have this vision and this strategy. So if we start off this way, we'll ultimately get to the end. They sold that business in 2021, over $23 million to a French company.
Yep.
So the decision was worth it. But I think first you've got to make a decision, then have that strategy and the systems to
consistency. You got to stick with it. And fear is fine. It's fine to fear things. It's fine to not know the unknown. You just need to be willing to take that first step and do it in a very measured way and watch the results and monitor the results and change things as things happen. And that's why you've got to sit down and have a management meeting, even if it's just with you and yourself, once a month, and ask questions around performance and where are you heading and are you hitting your targets and things like that. Hold yourself accountable, and through that you can achieve the transition from job to business.
And I think you've got to believe that this is the right thing to do. You've got to believe it's right. And you get that belief by having the business plan, which you mentioned. You got the business plan, you know this is the way it's going to work, then you have the belief you'll do it. If you think to yourself, oh, well, I'll give it a go, and if it doesn't work, I can always go back to the job, that's not the right way to approach it. You've got to attack it with absolute 100% commitment and belief. And the belief comes from having the strategy, the business plan, the systems in place. You just implement.
That's right. And if you don't know how to do this sort of stuff, invest some time and money into learning, teach yourself, educate yourself, and find the right advisors. Surround yourself with people that have done it, people that can guide you, whether it be friends of yours that have got successful businesses, or whether you get business advisors on board or business brokers on board to come and help you with the process.
Mentors, yep.
Mentors, yep.
Yep, that's right. So, but I like what you just said first. I think a lot of people just figure it out themselves. And sometimes when you take ownership, you figure it out yourself, you actually do a better job.
You do, but you got to be careful. So
You don't know what you don't know.
That's right. And if I go back to my first business, if I had a mentor in my very first business guiding me, tapping me on the shoulder and saying, don't do that, I probably would be sitting on my yacht right now in the Mediterranean, sitting back and, having pina coladas, whatever it might be. But so you do need to take ownership yourself, but don't fear asking help. Don't fear seeking out advice, because other people have come before you. They've made the mistakes and they can often see it better than you can because you're in it, They're out of it and they can see that.
Actually, people with experience love to be asked. If you've been an ex-rugby league player and a footballer comes to you and says, can you help me out? They love helping out. If you've been in business and someone comes to you and wants a bit of a hand, it's very exciting.
It is, absolutely.
To help them. So there's no problem with offering you advice. By the way, Peter has had several businesses, books, textbooks.
Done many things, books, medical recruitment, consulting, software, all sorts of different things. And I think that's the beauty of our business, is that you can go left, right, center in different directions wherever it takes it. And if you've got the belief in yourself, then it doesn't really matter what you do in business, as long as you're willing to give it a go. And if you fail, that's fine, because you actually never, ever truly fail. What happens is you learn.
Exactly.
Move forward and grow.
So, but the good thing about having you with us, Pete, is it's not all theory. If you've done that, you've
Been there, done that. That's right.
So, and one of the things I know we often think about is the future. My view of this job business thing is that in the future, my view is, and it's a general view, that younger kids, like my 3 kids, coming out of university or school, don't really want to work in a job or their own business as a job. That's too much stress. Why would I buy a job business where I can earn $200,000 a year or $100,000 a year? Well, I can go get a job at an airport or a university or a hospital earning similar money, and I don't have to worry about it. I clock off and go home. So this is another reason why we need to look at not having a job but having a business, which people will want to buy. They will want to buy into a company which is operating. So, but Pete, you've got a theory about the change of jobs to more freelance type things, right?
That's right. So I think a lot of people, the new generation coming through, they want to be more in control and they want more flexibility. I think a lot of young people nowadays, they're coming through and they're saying, well, I don't really want to be stuck working for the same organization, doing the same things for however many years. And what people are preferring to do is freelancing. So freelancing is an interesting concept, because it's a job, but it's a business tied together at the same time. But it's not really a job because you got multiple clients, but it's a job because, well, it's your sole source of income. And if you're not working as a freelancer, you're not actually making money. And it's fascinating, the trend that's happening at the moment in terms of the number of freelancers in every field. There's so many consultants, advisors, freelancers, call them whatever you want to call them. The problem, though, is twofold. First of all, often the individuals who are stepping into the freelance economy, they're not paying them superannuation. So they're not contributing to future retirement funds and securities. So that's a big issue that I'm certainly seeing out there. The other issue is that they're not thinking as business owners. So they're going off and doing the work, but they're not actually hedging themselves against the future. They're not actually building value or an asset. And that might be a fantastic freelancer having done it for, say, 10 years. They want to sell the business. Well, what have they got to sell? Not much. They might have some relationships, but the relationships are tied to the individual. So I think more and more we need to be talking about the whole concept of becoming a business owner, the whole concept of turning a job into a business.
Or a freelancer, become
a freelancer.
Yes, exactly.
Because these freelancers in 40 years' time, when they go to retire, they'll have minimal super funds if they haven't contributed, and they'll have minimal value in their business. And they're going to have a tough time walking away from earning an income and
a retirement,
having quality of life.
So, yeah. So similarly to the job, the freelancer might be the future version of a buyer job. So even freelance type people need to have that longer term vision, not live for the today, but figure out how they can A, put some money aside, and B, get more people on board so they can turn that what they're doing into a business.
But it's a tough environment to be in. You can make really good money as a freelancer, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's like being a medical doctor. If that's all you do, you get paid when you see the patient and that's it. Then the money runs out when the patient's not there. So there's some clever organizations, and there's one company that I've been following for a little while now. What they're doing at the moment is buying up freelancers that are burnt out. So a lot of freelancers out there, they're in a particular industry. I won't mention it because
but it's easy to burn out. Yeah,
it's easy to burn out. So what they do is they literally buy the freelancer's book, and they buy the book of clients. The freelancer then takes a job up, a proper formal job within the company. The company pays them out the book value, so the freelancer gets value immediately, and then they get a secure job with tax, superannuation, all those benefits as a result. Now, what's interesting about that is that company is owned by two young, very, very entrepreneurial guys who have just seen the writing on the wall, and they've realized the freelance economy is happening, but at the same time, freelancers are burning out. And all of a sudden, their business over the past probably 3 or 4 years has just mushroomed. And it's phenomenal what they're starting.
Taking advantage of that burnout.
Absolutely. So opportunities reside everywhere.
So I think that's everything we wanted to talk about with jobs and businesses, unless you've got anything else.
No, I think there's one other thing that I'll add in there. So if you're in a job position, and even if you've got a business, don't fear technology. We hear a lot of things about technology and all these things available to us. Embrace technology, because by embracing technology, you can move from the job to the business much quicker. And if you're at a business already and you're in that coveted position of not having to work in a day-to-day, you need to embrace technology as well so that your business can continue growing, so that you can continue succeeding well into the future. So that's probably it for me.
All right. Well, that's been great, Pete. I think in future we might talk a little bit more about the tips and traps in turning your job into a business, and some other ideas that we've seen about effective business ownership and management and growth.
Absolutely.
Talk about that in another session. So thanks everybody for joining us today. We'll see you next time. If you want to listen to this podcast, you can listen to it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts when you search Meaning Business Podcast. So search Meaning Business Podcast, or you can watch it on YouTube under YouTube /Benchmark Business. So if you go on there, be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and stay tuned for more Meaning Business episodes. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.